Welcome to Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My name is Jessie Ott, the host of this podcast, which is all about beverage innovation. I talk with innovation pioneers from agriculture to glass. This week, I'm speaking with Nicolas Guillant, a Frenchman who spent his first 5 years in Cameroon, Africa, and grew up in Paris, France. I met Nicolas while working together at Remy Cointreau, my first job in the beverage industry, and his second. After graduating with his MBA, he was hired by Seagram to assess the value of their champagne brands, which included Mumm and Perrier Jouet. Once those brands sold to Pernod Ricard, Nicolas found himself at Remy Cointreau in New York City and managed all the brands except Remy Martin. He jumped out of the biz with an amazing opportunity in Las Vegas working for Ceasars Holdings on the Harrah's brand. Missing the beverage world, he started at William Grant & Sons in marketing, but ran their portfolio of business in both Canada and the Nordic countries, totaling just over 7 years. He then took leadership roles as president of the Americas for Marie Brizard Wine and Spirits Group and EVP at Gerard Bertrand Wines before taking the global chief commercial officer role at Alexandrian Group based in Romania. Nicolas has had a true global leadership career for some of the world's top brands and understands our three-tiered system and the opportunities that remain. I'm excited for Nicolas' next steps as he navigates these gaps in the market to create his own business. Thank you for listening, and be sure to subscribe to be notified of all new episodes. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My name is Jessie Ott, and I have Nicolas Guillant here with me today. Hello, Nicolas. How are you today?
Hello, Jessie. Very good. Thank you. Warm but good.
Yeah. So where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Dallas. So
Dallas,
we
Texas.
still have Dallas, Texas, over 100 degrees for almost a quarter now. So we're getting used to it.
We drive back next Friday. So we arrive next Friday, and that's the one thing I'm like, it's been. People say that are from here say it's been really hot, but it's been cooler here than in Dallas most days.
Really?
Even with our humidity, yeah, it's crazy.
I think I prefer dry heat. Having lived in Vegas and Miami, I find 100 plus in dry heat easier to bear than 92 with 80% humidity that you can get in Miami or New York.
Yeah, no, definitely. I remember when I've lived in South Florida before, but I didn't have a house and a yard and things to do and be outside a lot. And so, I'd be working outside, and like an hour later, I'm like, what's going on? It's like 88, maybe 90 degrees. I have to go sit for like an hour. And I'm like, oh, the humidity makes it like 100. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, you don't realize how much that humidity really impacts your overall ability to kind of
to function,
cohabitate in the environment. Yeah, I don't even want to talk about how we heat our pool. It's embarrassing, but it's wonderful.
No, that we don't do. We just wait. It hits up. I wish I could correlate this. I'm sure full 3 months of 100 degrees plus, it gets warm.
The pools definitely get warm, but on our end, can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, I can't see you, so I just wasn't sure. Let me see if I can turn off something to. It turned off the settings. Oh, I can't adjust it. Anyway, okay. Yeah, well, our pool is on the north side, and it's covered. And so it gets down to 85, 83, 80, okay. It's kind of stayed around there. So we just keep it heated just slightly, just so that's cold. To just kind of hang out in. We're not really, actively swimming like kids. And
yeah, exactly.
Be cold.
Well, but
we're old and lazy and just want to sit in a hot tub.
No, I get it. I get it. With a good cocktail at end, it's the best way.
So, Nicola, where are you originally from?
So originally from France. So I was born in France, was raised uh, in Africa, came back to France. So I would, call myself a nomad. I had been living in, I think, 8 or 9 different countries, 3 continents.
Wow.
So we've always moved, and I'm now married to Mexican. So my family is a little bit like the UN. Have they're Canadian, Swede, French, American, and Mexican. So it's a big crew we have. Lots of
That is
passport to carry.
that is really cool. I love that. Where did you meet your wife?
We met randomly in New York. One of those stories, they always say in New York, you can't meet anyone. And we bumped into one another in a restaurant. We had no common friends. She was living in Mexico, I was living in New York. So it was true fate. There was no
Oh,
reason
that's
for us
cool.
to meet, but, it was actually a Cipriani. So a good Bellini always helped to break the ice. So it was totally fate.
Oh, that's cool. I love that. That's awesome. And so, how long have you guys been together then?
We've been together, we're coming to 15 years together.
Okay.
So a
Okay.
long road
Yes.
behind and
Yes.
hopefully a long road ahead of us as well.
You have what?
A long road ahead of us still to
Oh,
come to.
yes, yes. Yes, that's good. That's the exciting part.
Exactly. Yeah, always looking forward.
Yep, certainly. So where in France were you from?
I'm originally from Paris. I'm one of those few. It's like New York. A lot of people live in Paris. Very few people are from Paris. So I
Yeah.
was, born in Paris. So true Parisian, as they say.
Nice. Nice. I love Paris. Oh, I got to spend a summer there. I stayed in La Défense.
Oh,
But I
nice.
visited a few times, when I was a student over there, but yeah, it's a great city.
No, no, it's a beautiful city. That I can't. I would have to admit, beautiful place to spend time and live. Actually, it's a good city to live in.
Yeah, it certainly is. I remember a good friend of mine when I went to grad school over in Rennes. He came to visit me in New York. I can't remember if we ended up going to DC together. But he has Paris to compare to the world.
It's
And
always tough.
he's like New York, there's gum all over the place, it's dirty, there's no flowers. There's no I'm like, yeah, it's different.
It's yeah, yeah. They're big. I mean, Paris is very. I mean, we're blessed. When you live there, you have your visuals are always incredible. So it makes a big difference, and it's hard to compare. But New York has offer other things. So does Miami. That's what I love is
Yeah.
every city has something to offer if you know where to look and how to look.
Yep. Yeah, or just, you enjoy the city for what it gives, right?
Mhm.
Um, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I hate to get into soccer football so early, but it's interesting how PSG is always taking the older, best
Ah.
players ever and then spin them out like after 2 years. What's going on there? How did
uh,
Messi end up in Miami?
well, he followed the money uh, pretty well. I think if you look PSG, it's very interesting because it's you could really have an analogy with any kind of industry. It's a great team; they have all the money in the world, but at the end of the day, what they don't have is the right, you know, environment to compete. Their biggest problem in France is that if you look at those teams every weekend they have to really those players will have to play at their highest level. France level as a league is not high. So when you're Messi, when you're Mbappe and so on, they actually play maybe 10 minutes every weekend of their real level. So when they go to Champions League and so on, then they get totally crushed because they can't sustain that competitiveness. So it's interesting because I think as a team, when you look at it, there's a lot of big players, but there are big players everywhere. It's just that the culture of the company, of the club wasn't there. Seems, crossing our fingers, it seems they're changing it finally, but it's culture and it's how you compete. If you're not pushed, you can't race to your best game when you need it.
That makes total sense. I've become a Messi fan because I was a Ronaldo fan back when I was. I know I follow the rest of the world, but the reason why is a little bit different. I don't know if it's different than most people, but I went to grad school in 99-2000, and it was the Euro Cup, and I saw him play for Portugal for the first time, and I can't remember the older gentleman's name, but those two played so well, and I was so mesmerized by his footwork and the quality. And I don't know anything about soccer, but I'm just saying I was so impressed with this person, this up-and-coming person, that I started following him, and then he went to Real Madrid, and so I followed him there. And then it's always become this Messi versus Ronaldo thing, but it's clear that Messi's the better man in my opinion, based on what you see in the media anyway. And then
I don't know. I mean, I don't know either. Interesting. It's interesting because to me, I mean, it's the same. Is what do you value the most? Is it the natural? Because Messi is a natural. He's an incredible, talented player, one of the best that ever has walked.
Agreed.
While Ronaldo is a hell of a hard worker. So you're the same when you look at your team. What do you want? You want the talented, person who's gonna naturally get everything, or you value more the one who's doing all the work. It may not have the talent, but make it up and more by his dedication, his drive, his commitment. It's an interesting one, and I think for me, Messi is as bad as Ronaldo in terms of personality. He just pretends to be the cool, nice guy. But I don't think he's as interested in the money, is as dirty as the other. But he's an incredible player, but it's talent versus hard work. I think it's an interesting way of summarizing those two players.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. It makes total sense. And I think the one part that when I was watching them so regularly back in the day was Messi was this guy that can go in the middle and fight his way to get a goal. Ronaldo just wants a foul. You know what I mean? To me, that's like grit versus, I don't know, just give me a foul so I can, have a free kick or whatever the case may be. That seemed to me like a big difference for me. And I was like, I think I like the Messi way a little bit better. You know?
No. They're both two incredible players, but and what Messi has done to the MLS, I think will be short-lived, but have been great. But I think, give him another 3 months and he'll stop playing. I know.
What happened to those game ticket prices when he went to Dallas? To me, he could have gone and played for the UAE, a league that no one cares about, for probably a lot more money. So for me, I'm thinking, well, if he's going to Miami, he's going there for a reason. I'm sure there's a lot of money. But to me,
I think he's making more money in Miami than he would in Saudi. Yeah, because if you look at his deal, he gets a cut on all the revenue generated from the Apple, the games are shown by Apple TV, so he's getting a cut on that. He's getting an equity into Miami. He's getting a cut on the revenue generated by MLS on sales of tickets. I mean, at the end of the day, that's why he always pretends to be the sportsman. It's all about the sports. And I think that's part of his... But at the end of the day, it's all about business. The money is making.
It's all about money. That's the disappointing part.
Yeah, good for them. It's a lot of money.
I don't know what's going on with Ronaldo. I didn't care about him going and play for the Italian league. No offense to any Italians. I just didn't. At that point also, I was kind of just over. I can't handle all these games and watching it. And then he went to play for someone in the UK, and now he's I don't know. Did he leave that or get fired? I don't know. But in my opinion, he should be coming over here and playing against Messi again. That would raise a whole new level of like MLS to the world, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it might. You never know. But I think the Arab League is like in anything. They're growing. They have the money. They look like the player. They play pretty well. You never know.
You never know.
And it's a big market again.
One of my favorite players went and played for them.
Indeed.
Oh, I could talk about this. Well, actually, I'm at the end of my knowledge of it all. Because, I mean, you get to a point where you can't keep up with it, you know? But it's interesting.
Well, in America, they have it with football and baseball. Yeah. We do have it with soccer. So I think we can go on and on and on.
And Japan has baseball. I don't know if you've ever been to Japan or ever seen a baseball game, but I highly recommend it.
No, I haven't, but I know they're big. They're big in baseball.
Yeah, they have cheerleaders. They have bands. Bands come from the other team. They have chants for each player that comes up to plate. It's the fastest baseball game I've ever been to. It was cool, and they serve highballs there, so I don't really drink much beer. So I was like, yeah, I'm in. But the seats are like, I don't know, 18 inches.
Tiny.
You know, they don't have space. They don't have understanding for space there, for personal space.
No, they don't.
You're just like, and but anyway, it was amazing. 45,500 people in that stadium. And we were 8 white people, and there was probably like 11 of us there.
That's
so it was really cool, and they're high-fiving us, and because we were getting into the game, we're used to sitting in a baseball game and where's the popcorn, or let's go get a hot dog. You know what I mean? And they're just cheering, and they've got their sticks. Anyway, I digress. Let's get back to you.
No, I'll make sure next time if I ever get back to Japan, you can see a game, because
it is worth it. It was the most under expectations. However you want to say it, like. We had no expectations going into this because we're like, well, we don't really normally go to we'll go to a Rangers game once in a while, or like every 5 years. I don't mind baseball, but not really knowing what we were getting into, it was such an amazing surprise that I'd go back every time I would go back to Japan. I'd go to a baseball game.
It's added on my list of to do next time I'm in Japan.
Yeah, it's cool. It's really cool. We missed the sumo wrestling, but maybe we'll get that next time.
Yeah, next time. There's always a next time.
There's always a next time. We're definitely going back. It is cool. It is really awesome there. Hot. Very hot in the summertime.
It is.
But yeah. So you're from Paris, and you said you moved to Africa?
I moved I spent the first almost 5 years of my life in Africa, then went back to Paris, and then did a postgraduate program between the UK, Germany, and France. And that's how I started in the wine and spirit business, and then, stayed in France for a couple of years and moved to the US after, in 2000. And then since I've been primarily based in the US with some back into Europe in between.
So where in Africa?
I was in Gabon, Cameroon. So 2 West Africa, all French, colonies. Mm-hmm. My parents, my dad had a job there, so we went there. Have very little recollection of anything.
Yeah, I just 0 through 5.
0 through 5 I don't have. I just felt very comfortable. I've been back to Africa, and it feels like home. It's just a place I felt comfortable in, but then we went back to Paris.
Okay, nice. And did you get a job in the wine and spirits industry while you were in Paris before you came over to the U.S.?
I started. I wouldn't say I went into it wasn't a passion of mine, apart from like every young kid drinking way too much. Uh, that was actually, it was better for me to stay away from liquor. But it was just, I was at the time doing my MBA, and one of my family members was working for Seagram. He was part of their strategy team, had led the purchase of Absolute at the time,
Okay.
and was managing what they MD for Martel. So I needed to do, a little project for my master degree. So I picked, I picked a subject matter that we discussed, right, which was around the impact of long-term consumer trends, like the mega trends. How do they impact over time sales of alcohol? Did that, then they offered me a job at that time, which, I was right off, didn't have to search. So I took it, of course. And it was also in Champagne, so it was in their Champagne division. So that was great. So took that and been in the business all my career, apart from, I would say, 2 years in the mid 2000, where after it was about 10 years in the liquor business. I didn't know if I was in that business because I enjoyed it or because that's all I knew. And I went and did a stint in the casinos and then came back 2 years after. So I guess I actually enjoyed the wine and liquor universe.
Yeah, I hear you. I did the same thing. So what did you do for them, for Mumm?
So for Mumm, I got very lucky in a way. It was a blessing and a curse because I got involved, and I got involved right from the get-go on a strategic project. At the time, Seagram was already, because Edgar Brofman Jr. was the CEO or the chair, was starting to look outside of the business, thinking it wasn't providing enough revenue and it wasn't a sexy industry to be in. So I was part of the group that was assessing the champagne business for Seagram, with a view that they wanted to increase their ratio, their performance ratio, and their profitability ratio. So every business unit was being assessed with the BCG, and so I was part of the client team working with BCG, assessing the champagne business and trying to identify how do you grow value, what is the best return you can expect from that type of business. And, at the time, the Champagne division of Seagram, which was Mumm, Perrier Jouet, Piper, Heidsieck, etc., was low compared to, whiskey and other categories. So we worked on how to improve it. So it was super interesting because I was, involved with senior manager when I was out of, grad school. So definitely not the right level of experience there, but I was part of all the team meetings, part of the work. Ended up going to New York to present to Edgar Brofman the results, and at the end, was put in charge of managing or monitoring the execution of the strategic plan that was put in place, which was interesting because at the same time they were looking at selling the business, and it was the first part of the business they sold. They sold, they started selling a lot of brands, and then they got rid of some of the champagne houses. So it was very interesting to be part of it. Totally different, because instead of starting the business the normal way and it's small, I got to see the big picture, understand the value chain, look at all the elements of the business. And after a few years there, I changed because they started selling everything. It was obvious that they were going to get rid of the business. So I moved to a different company.
I didn't realize they had Piper back then.
Yeah, they had Heidsieck Monopole. They had a lot of brands.
Wow.
I mean, it was a powerhouse
Why did they do that? I, I guess they just...
when you look at the business, it's a very cyclical business.
It is.
It goes in 7 years where it's boom, then the prices go way too high. That was prior to, I think in the last few years, he hasn't done that, but then he used to drop and then rebuild. And it was a business as well that in terms of profit, because it's wine, because of the make you have to age, your profitability is much more lower in terms of ratio of return on investment, EBITDA compared to whiskey, for example, or to vodka. So, Seagram wanted to raise their average ratio, and it was difficult to do in champagne unless you were selling very high premium. So that's why they started to sell, because they said, well, okay, it's a lot of lots of assets, lots of working capital.
Yeah, that's true.
We don't like it. We want to move stuff. Let's sell it.
Interesting. Wow, I didn't realize that. Okay, so so you went to go work for Remy right after that?
Yeah, I went to work for Remy. Then I went back into a normal process. I went into marketing, international brand manager, and I started, traveling the world a lot more. And I then moved from wine to liquors. So I went and worked on the Italian liquor portfolio, which was Galliano. A brand every American knows that you have the bottle sitting in the bar never being used.
Yep.
But so
it used to be the one bottle that was in every single bar, but that's no longer the case.
Yeah,
there's too many brands.
And when you look at the amount of business that was made, because it was really two drinks that made that brand, which was a lot of the issues of the liquors. Take even Cointreau, take away Margarita and Cosmopolitan, and they've lost 70% of their volume are gone. Galliano was Harvey Wallbanger, and it was a hot shot, which was a shot drunk in Scandinavia. But it made the brand, it made a lot of money. So I learned a lot more classical marketing. It was also interesting because I think I got to live a lot of the big waves, tidal waves of the industry. I was with Seagram when they started selling. I was with Remy when Remy almost went bankrupt. Because back in the day, Remy almost went bust. And if you look at the story, Pernod bought Seagram, but it could have been Remy. Remy was as big as Pernod back in the days, but it shows you how the world is. It depends on one little human error. At the time, Remy had a huge distribution network across the world, and they had a CFO who made a mistake in hedging currencies. And when he made a mistake, he started losing a lot of money, and instead of alerting the family and doing the right thing, he doubled down.
Oh,
and
no.
The company went from being very profitable to a loss of, I can't remember if it was euro but something like 500 million francs or euro, whole.
Jeez.
And so that's how they created Maxim. Maxim was the way for Remy to save themselves from having to close shop, because they then brought Jim Beam, Absolute, and all those guys. They sold part of their distribution network, and it took them easily 10, 15 years to rebuild to where they are today. But had that CFO not made that crazy move, they could have been the one buying half of the Seagram brands, and it would be a whole different story.
Interesting. Yeah, because they eventually got rid of all their wines. Huh. So
they got rid of a lot.
I didn't know that.
I know. There's a lot of title, things happen.
One person.
I remember, one person, and it was very interesting because, you could see it was a drama. The business was, at the time, you had Huub van Doorn and Roland van Bommel were driving and riding a very good, very strong leader. Huub van Doorn was a great marketer, very solid, and he started establishing all the rules of brand that guide so well Remy. And Roland van Bommel was a hell of an operator in terms of managing distribution companies. So the two of them made it a very, very solid duo.
Okay, and they're the ones that kind of helped rebuild and think differently, think strategically.
They're the one who saved the company because they're the one who orchestrated the sale and the creation of Maxim. Then the one who managed Maxim for a very long time, that was Roland. So they really were, but I think Huub was, when you look at what he did with Remy Martin and so on, he was the one who understood brand and really started creating that very strong brand culture at Remy Cointreau, where really, the global brand team were extremely powerful.
Do you want to talk a little bit about what Maxim is? I don't know if everybody's heard of it.
Yeah, no. Maxim used to be one of the large distribution organization. So it was, they were not brand owner. They were a joint venture initially of Remy Cointreau, Absolute, Jim Beam, and there was a fourth, and I can't remember what the fourth was. So you had fourth partner that pull all their various distribution network across the world to create the first fully global network to compete with, at the time, what was coming to be Diageo, etc. So they were active in every market. The only market they never went together was the US because, obviously no one wanted to do that. It was too big of a market. But it really helped them create powerhouses in distribution because it's the period when people realize that in most markets, the distribution is a scale game. So you need to have the right scale. You need to have the right portfolio in order to sustain your organization.
So did they end up creating a separate company with salespeople that just work for them, and they
it was a Maxim organization, and it was, depending on the people on the country, it was heavily skewed toward a Remy base or a Jim Beam or an Absolute. So they started constituting a new entity, which then went separated a few years ago. Because they were having more challenges as shareholder. But yeah, it was a totally separate entity, just selling all the brands of the shareholder in the market. And that allowed them in many markets to have between the top 3 position in distribution. And it lasted for quite some years. And then Remy got rich enough to go on their own, and they started to have too much of a gap, which you have a lot on distribution company. You had a gap that they couldn't manage between the type of brand they had. You had super premium on one end, and then you have mass brands. And when you start to establish and drive and they get to scale, there's a permanent fight, because what you need for mass is different than what you need for super premium. So it starts to struggle on how do you put your resources. Do you hire more salespeople? Do you hire more, brand educator? How do you structure your business? Because, if you build an on-premise high premium brand, you need a different structure than if you do mass deals with big retail.
So what did they end up doing?
They broke away. So Maxim sort of disappeared because shareholders started to leave. And they started to break it down. So, they then kept certain entity and slowly dissolved Maxim. But it was a big move at the time, because it was one of the first steps where distribution focus went into distribution. So and they started to look at how do you become more effective and efficient in your distribution. Also because it's the time when you had big companies starting to pop up, the Diageo, the Pernod, they get to a scale that if you want to compete, you need to find solution.
Yeah. That whole scale and grow, and you gotta adapt to what the market is telling you. You know?
I mean, yeah, and if you look at today, it's very interesting. Today, I mean, the US is a perfect example. You can work different models, but if you want to be a big player, and given the fact that the wholesaler control the market, it's all a question of scales. It's either scale, which are low, because at the end, it's the distributor the distributor are not brand builder.
Correct.
They will make sure your brand is in distribution, but you are the one to create demand. So what everybody ends up doing is they end up sort of dueling the role of a wholesaler, having their own sales force. And I think the one that does it very interestingly, is Mumm, because all they did is they gave distribution rights to Diageo in a way, which allowed them to focus all their efforts on marketing to create pull. And this is why, if you look at it, why do all now companies develop celebrity endorsed or backed brands? Is because it's cheaper. Because your celebrity will drive your consumer pull.
Yeah.
And, will get you the scale you need, because otherwise you're going to get distribution and then it won't pull out of the shelf. And the distributor will turn around and say that the famous distributor equation, the health of a brand is a result of distribution multiplied by equity. We do the distribution, you do the equity. If it doesn't turn and we've done distribution, you have an equity problem. So it's always interesting, but I think that's why we had a shift. It went back in the 2000s, a lot around distribution efficiency, scales, and now they've come to a certain sort of limitation, and they're moving now to celebrity, just saying, you know what, I'm just going to find a way to drive that velocity quickly, and then I'm going to use my scale to make sure it's everywhere.
Interesting. So what do you think about all this distributor consolidation that's happened over the last 20 years?
I think, having worked a lot in the US, there's a lot of people who tell you that the distributors are the worst. I tend to say differently. If you look at the size of the US, no company could do it on their own, because the amount of resources, investment you would need to put to be able to properly service the market is too huge. So you need a wholesaler. I think I fully understand why they consolidate, because at the end, for me, if you look at the way some of them see themselves, their benchmark are company like Cisco, the food service. So their job, they're logistic players. The bigger they get, the more footprint they have, the better for them, because then all they need to know is optimize their routes and making sure that they generate the most amount of value per square foot in their truck. So at the end, the bigger you are, take Southern with the first, and they've been very smart. If you look, and I've worked both of them, there is a big gap between Southern and everyone else, because Southern had the scale, the size, to actually be the only one to, if you have a really national brand, you need Southern, because they are the only one that can deliver everywhere. And because of their size, they're able to invest and be way ahead of the curve in terms of use of digital tools, everything to make their operation better. So it's a sort of catch-22. The size allows you to increase your competitive advantage. What they're not doing, and that's, I think, a lot of the issue with supplier, they believe the wholesaler is there to help them build the brand. The wholesaler is not there to help build the brand. The wholesaler distributes. So, right. And that's where my stint in the casino was very interesting, because the model of casino is all about revenue generated per square foot. It's all about revenue. And, distributor, like where RNDC is going, where Southern is going, is all about that. It doesn't matter if they sell your vodka or mine, they need a vodka on a truck. So they'll make sure, and they're here to serve their their customer.
Right.
What matters to them is the customer in the HEB, the Walmart, the bar. It is not the brand owner. What they care is, do I have 80% of that shelf? How do I get 80% of that shelf? Whether it's your brand or another, doesn't matter. What they want is own 80% of that shelf and own 80% of the available cash to be spent by the customer. And that's it.
Yeah.
So for me, it's good that it creates opportunity, because, and you've seen it a lot, there's more and more new distributor popping in. But then the question, it's a little bit like retail. Total Wine as a model, if you try to compete heads to head with Total Wine, you'll never win.
Yeah.
Now, distributors have to find ways to offer a differentiated service. And it can take many forms. It can be ability to service your premium accounts. It can be whatever you decide, because your distributor doesn't do it. As we all have lived it. You want to build your brand, you send your team to do the sale, and then the distributor, take the order. So it's just a question of, there's room for everyone, I think. And the big question for me down the line is what will happen with Wine. Because as you know, Southern is, lobbying very actively, and having worked in Canada, I can tell you that once the Canadian board opened up to marijuana and gave it to the liquor company, in a matter of a year and a half of the revenue generated by Southern Canada was marijuana based. So at the end, you do it in the US, they may totally change their outlook of three-tier system. It may change a lot of things, because they all make so much revenue from marijuana-based product, that they may let go of the wine, they may let go of a lot of things.
That's an interesting theory. I hadn't even thought of the effects of marijuana on the industry. You never think it's going to change, right? But you have an insight, being that you've understand the Canadian market.
We don't know what's going to happen, but they've been solving openly now to get for the government to give the the wholesaler the control of the distribution. And if they do, the margin are huge. It's going to be a game changer. If you look at their model, personally, I wouldn't stay in a lot of the businesses, because why would I care about that working capital and having to deal with wine and all the complexity? I can turn my business around. So I don't know. It's one personal opinion, but I think there's still a lot of changes to come.
Do you think that the wine and spirit distribution channels are the right way to distribute marijuana on a larger scale? It will get approved. I just don't know when. I
think if you look at this, there's two main questions when it comes to cleanliness, for the government. Forget the whole ethical, do you need to make drugs legal or not? There's the two main questions. The number one is tax. Can the federal government collect the tax? The second is, can we control and limit the health negative impact of it? So the wholesaler come back and say, hey, look at us, since prohibition, you have a system that has been very effective. We're collecting the tax. There's not been a lot of fraud. It's really controlled. And look at control. Well, we're doing a pretty decent job on making sure that, we control, excessive abuse. So I think that's their argument to say we have a hell of a good track record. Trust us.
Yeah, that's interesting. Going back to consolidation, I lived in New York City from 2000. Well, we worked together. I don't know, 2001 to 2003, something like that. That's when we met. And I remember I was on Long Island. I did get a house one summer there just to check out the Hamptons, and maybe this was that trip. I can't even remember who they were. I just remember being at a bar. We wanted to go try some wines from New York, and the gentleman that I was with had a friend out there, and so we were just sitting there talking, and he happened to be on is it Boston Consulting Group, I think, on the team that recommended Diageo to start consolidating with one distributor. And they're the ones that started this whole kind of whole movement, and they were big enough to be able to do it and to do it effectively, and then to kind of start the ball rolling. But that's been 20 years. It's not a long time in the 20 years. In the grand scheme of things.
And, and that's been a whole. So for me, I think it's just the way the market is structured, but I'm not too sure that, seeing them as evil, I'm not too sure that we would be capable as, as brand owner to do the same effective distribution tomorrow.
I don't either.
Have wholesalers.
A company can't afford it. They just can't afford to not have somebody out there to help them sell it. I 100% am behind you. I just think that they do get big, and gets in this market, it's just harder and harder to get employees to stay longer, to pay them, to this, that, and the other. It's the squeeze, I think, in the market. I don't think that it's unique in any way. No, but it is a challenge to, promise these suppliers these numbers and scramble, I guess, to kind of make sure they have a team.
I would say with that, to me, it's, pharmacists only count for those who listen to, who trust them. A distributor less and less makes promises on volume.
Oh, that's good.
If you look at the way they are, they won't promise depletion, no promise distribution point. They start to move away, exactly on purpose, because back then, back then they also changed their model. Back then, the state, a state president could order whatever they want, and you had a good relationship, and he was a buddy of yours, and that person would order 3 containers and push it. More and more, at least in the larger, they have lost that ability.
Interesting.
It's controlled centrally because they used to have so much working capital that they'd say, "What the hell?" And now it's way less on volume, unless you're here. Yeah, Joe, one of the big division, but it's way more on point that they feel they can control better. They don't want to commit. They don't want their people to commit to volume, because at the end they will make the revenue. They may not make it with revenue,
right?
But they will sell that vodka or that wine or that Cabernet, whatever it is. they'll sell it. It might be a different brand, but it's not going to go away.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's kind of the downside of building a brand too, because you want to get rid of a whole bunch of cases. You go to a retailer, whatever, and say, hey, we'll give you this for 50% off, or whatever the deals that they have out there. And now they're stuck with all this product, and then they're going to discount it, and it doesn't look good. So it is a catch 22 game out there, to have to be able to make a number, shove it in whatever place you can, and then sit on product forever and not order it. So yeah, it is a challenge, especially
it is.
All these new brands that are coming about with, I had Cheryl Dursey on here with Lib Dib and what she's kind of done to offer an alternative for smaller brands that have the ability to kind of either get a broker in each state or whatever the case may be, to start building their brands a little bit more organically. And it's certainly a tougher model, but if you can get people that are engaged on the street.
No, I think Lib Dib is a perfect sort of new development in the distributorship, because at the end, as you said, people want access to diversity. They want to be able to do it, and they do it in a much more efficient way, like a huge marketplace. So I think it's a very interesting model. For a startup or for new brands, why would you go? I would never go to a big one of the big distributors. You're going to get lost. There's no way you can win. This is a much better way. It helps you build a base, and then size matters. And then once you have a real role, then yes, if you're Terramana, work with Southern Glazers, because that's how you're going to go from 300,000 to a million in no time, because no one can deliver the way they can.
Right.
So again, I think it's a lot about understanding what your strategic goals are and playing the game the right way.
Yeah, because you got to get to scale by the time the Southern or RNDC are going to be like able to take them in. And LivDib has made this kind of cool partnership, whereas if you do get to a certain volume threshold, RNDC will go ahead and bring that product in, which is great. It's a nice,
exactly.
it's a nice way to know that if you're going to go in and you're going to succeed at this, you have a big national distributor that can kind of help take that brand on, which is great. It's a great process.
And it's also, and it's all great for RNDC, because it's, all of them are joking to try and make sure they don't miss the next big brands. If you look at Southern, not getting Tito was a big mess. They got Tito once they purchased Blazer, but before they didn't get it. So they always up for the lookout of what's going to be the next, big brand. So for RNDC, it's a great way of, making sure they potentially catch the next big fish, while at the same time, the challenge they have is that the margin they're using to distribute are very different from what they ask the other brands. So, that's they sell their trucks. They don't carry everything, but it's an interesting, I find LivDib very good answer to a lot of the challenges that the smaller brands have had.
Yeah, it's so smart. She's a great person, and seems like she's a really amazing leader, and they're growing all the time. So, and I had a brand I was gonna look into bringing into Texas, and the process is very simple. It's not a difficult paperwork heavy process. It's very simple. There's one I think it's a 14% charge, and that's it. Like that's it. It's very simple.
And when you look at it, the process is made much more cumbersome than it has to be. So if you can make it more efficient, everybody wins. And what I think on LivDib, what is great is a true marketplace. They're not promising you, they're not doing anything. They're just telling you want availability. We'll make sure that someone can actually order your product. So I think their way of doing it is very smart. Again, the challenge, I think, or the fallacy within it for a lot of suppliers, it doesn't change that you still need to go do the sales. And now, there are thousands and thousands of brands out there. So you're going to need to still do the heavy lifting on making sure they pick yours and stick with yours, which is not easy.
Yeah, I think you just go to the accounts that make sense for your brands and try to connect with them, and then it kind of grows organically from there. Because I'm sure there's a lot of accounts out there that are just looking for innovation. They just want the new thing. They want to try new things, test it out, see what works with their consumer base, and I like it a lot. I think it's really fun. So
I think it's a great model.
So we really got off track, but it was so interesting. I loved it. Do you have a time check at all? Are we good to go?
No, I'm good. Okay. No, we're good to go.
Okay. So you went from Mumm to being the international brand manager, and that's where you work on Galliano and what other brand?
Galliano, Vaccari, Passoa. I mean, I had a lot of liquors. Yeah. Well, no, Passoa was actually when I moved to the US. So then I moved from global team to domestic market, and spent 5 years at Remy working on, I would say, almost every brand but Remy Martin at the time. The only brand that of the portfolio I didn't touch at Remy. So totally different. Went from global, very big picture, the future to, as you know, immediate need and primarily execution, and did that for 5 years. And that's after that I left and did a stint in the casino to then come back to the full with William-Grant, where I spent eight years with William-Grant. So I did 8 years with Remy, 8 years with William-Grant.
Okay, so what casino did you work for?
On at Remy?
No, you said you left Remy and then went to go work in the casino industry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I worked for Caesars Harris. So the town was Harris Entertainment just had
Okay.
purchased Caesars, and they created a brand team whose job was creating the book and how to manage the various brands. So it was super interesting. And it lasted 2 years, and I left when Harris was bought up by a private equity firm. So it was the largest deal at the time. I think it was 32 billion. And they got purchased right before
Jeez.
the crisis. And at the time, first view that any private equity firm comes is cost cutting, and they obviously downsized a lot of the corporate team, and so I left, but it was a very interesting experience, very useful also back to for the spirit, because you got to get involved on how the customer were viewing the offers, what was important for them, and their way of doing business was a lot more data driven than it ever had been in wine and spirit.
So what were you were in marketing then,
Yeah,
or
I was in
like
brand marketing.
strategic?
So I went the shift that I did. I would say the first 10 years of my career, or 12, were proudly marketing, with more and more commercial, exposure. Because the closer you get to market distribution, more and more it's about your ability to understand sales and connect. And then I would say, starting really with William Ground, I started migrating more towards commercial. And I've been, GM for the last 10 years, GM or business unit region president for the last 10 years. So transition fully to a more general manager role.
So when you were at Caesars Harrah's, did you do marketing for the brand of Caesars Harrah's?
Yeah, I
Okay.
did Caesars.
And so that was like
under,
was it B2C or B2B or both, or?
It was both, because think of it this way: as you were in charge of designing the franchisee book, even though they were all owned by Caesars. You needed to create what was the brand experience and what defines a Caesars, for example. So we started to create all those book, and then so part of it was you were dealing with the GM of properties. At the time, Caesar Palace was a $700 million business, and you were dealing also with consumer, managing the campaign, the media. So it was a combination. But it was very interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. So then, did you move back to New York to work with William Grant?
Yeah, I moved back to New York for William Grant. Spent 8 years there in the U.S., then in Canada, then in Stockholm. So different outfit.
Fun.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Cold.
So work. Yeah. It was cold. I mean, Canada is a beautiful country, Sweden as well. But no, it was very interesting. Different markets, different route to market. So it was very interesting.
Yeah, I've been there once, Göteborg, and
Yep.
My roommate was in France in my grad school. He was from there, and so I went up for like a weekend, and it was really interesting. It was just really cold, and I'm a wimp.
It's a beautiful area. I was back then. I was managing the old Nordic, so it would be all the Sweden, Finland, Denmark, Norway, Iceland, duty free and domestic market. So it was totally different experience from the US. Or Canada, but super interesting.
Is there anything that you can explain, like what would be the difference in marketing to those cultures versus the U.S. and Canada? I'm thinking U.S. and Canada are pretty well aligned, but maybe it's completely different over there.
I think in general, the largest difference here with the Nordic is regulation. It's a highly regulated environment. So you're not allowed to do most consumer marketing is illegal because most of them do sell through state-controlled organization. So, and if you look at the big differences in Canada, the control boards report to the finance, minister. So it's all about the cash collection. In Sweden, it reports to the health minister. So it's all about mitigating the consumption. So as a marketing, it's very different because of the regulation you have to deal with.
Interesting. Huh. That's fascinating. Yeah, I remember in Sweden, it was part of the government, and you had to bring your own bags at the time. Even back then, like, this is 99, 2000. So that's interesting.
Yeah,
Fascinating.
You had a limit on how much you can. Back then, you had a way before you had limits. You had a little booklet where you could register how much liquor you were allowed to buy. I mean, it's a whole different ball game.
Wow.
So it changes a lot on the way you market. Also because you don't have the ability, a little bit like Canada, you don't control shelves. In the US, you can send your team, they'll display, do a lot. In Sweden, Norway, Finland, you don't touch the shelf. And in Sweden back then, they were putting the brand by alphabetical order.
Oh my gosh.
So that's why some people would put a letter before the name so that they can move on the shelf and have a better positioning on the shelf.
That's smart. That's really smart. So that's a way to get around the system. So were there health benefits to doing this? I mean, was there less drunk driving? Was there less people having any kind of problems?
I think. I mean, it all depends. You never know because it's whoever uses the data. I don't think it necessarily led to a huge decrease, because when you look at it, a lot of what they had goes beyond access to alcohol. As you said, it's how cold the country is, how dark the country is. If you take Sweden, it's their culture. They drink to oblivion. They're more English style of country. You go, you get drunk, and they don't remember it's a good night. And while in Southern Europe and in France, you drink not to get drunk, you drink just hours to accompany a good moment. So there's a lot of other elements that control. But remember, that's why if you look at back then in the Nordic, 50% of the business was duty free. We take crews to go get boozed out or buy alcohol at a lower price. So I don't know if you take all in.
Interesting.
I don't know.
That makes a lot of sense, because when I was there, I went to Norway too, went to Oslo. It was very expensive to just go into a bar and have a drink. Like, I was a student, I didn't have money, and I was like,
no, it's super expensive. That's why they all used to take flight and buy their alcohol in duty free on flight. Back then, when I was still living there in late 2000, early 2010. You were expected to come with some liquor if you were on any flight. So everybody had to bring alcohol back because, price difference was so bad. You had to, that was a given.
It seems like such a freedom to be taken away. Like there are other things I feel like. But
it worked. I mean, the system works. They still drink as much as anyone else, I think. So it's just a different. That's the beauty of the industry. There's so many different routes to market that if you get exposed to all of them, it's super interesting to see how everyone does it differently.
It really is. Because I don't know, what years were you there? Because I know when I was in France, and this has been a long time ago, and I haven't been back in a while, there's not a lot of choices when you go to a bar. There's maybe one or two vodkas, they don't have the back bars that, you do here. And
it's starting to change, but I think it's culturally. When I was growing up, I would take a a whiskey and Coke. I don't care about the brand.
Right.
So, you know, now because of globalization and they start to have and people care, but for the most part, French didn't care.
Yeah.
They just want a gin and tonic and whiskey and Coke, and that was it.
At our parties in school in France, that's your choices. You get beer, whiskey, coca, or gin and tonic. Yeah. That's it.
That was it, and maybe tequila. And that, but again, I think it's culturally now it's starting to change. But you know, and it's also very, I would say, again, it's changing. But when we were young, it's also very cultural.
Yeah,
French would have a hard time understanding why he needs to pay, 3 times more expensive for a brand of vodka. He can understand it for a while, but you'll tell him vodka is vodka, and he's like, okay, it's good enough. I'm going to mix it. I don't feel it. I don't care.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think that their take is on low and no? I know it's kind of taken off here in the U.S., and I know it's been big in the UK, but did you have any experience with that over there? Because I talked with a gentleman from Mexico who's been in the hospitality industry, for his whole career, and it's just culturally it's not a thing there, because the mindset is I aged this product in barrels to get it to the perfection of what I think should be this taste, and then you take all the alcohol out. Why are you changing thousands of years of evolution and changing it? So do you think that that mindset is similar to Europe?
I don't know. I don't know. I think it will come. I think at the end of it all, low alcohol and no alcohol will be a big thing.
Yeah,
because a lot of people, they need option. I mean, I would take the analogy with food and vegan versus, no vegan. Yeah. It was nowhere to be seen before, and now it pops up everywhere. I think it get there. Again, I think it's if you look at consumer, the same consumer may drink a non-alcohol one day and an alcoholic. I think it really depends. We have the ability, as long as the taste profile is there.
Yep.
Depending on whether you wanna the buzz of alcohol, or just feel that you're social without the potential effect that you're waking up the next day with a hangover, tired, or whatever. So I think France may fight it, or it will take time, but I think it will come no matter what.
Yeah.
How quickly, I don't know. I just read an article this morning. They released the first non-alcoholic champagne in France.
Wow. Okay. So it's starting to.
It is. It will come.
Spread some roots. Okay. Yeah, I think so too. I personally have experienced it this year, obviously more than any other time, a lot because of the podcast, because I've learned so much from different guests that I've had on, and I've got to try their products. And Athletic Brewing, I didn't know they have a gluten sensitive, it's crafted to remove gluten, and I just absolutely love this beer, and I love drinking in the pool because I don't want to have to have alcohol all the time. I just want to chill out, have a good tasting beer. I want to feel refreshed, and quite honestly, it's been a great experience for me. And from an economic standpoint, the different guests that I've had, Claire Warner was a really good resource on this, and I don't remember the figure, but it's huge on what people are leaving on the table by not having the non-alcoholic options. Just because if you don't want to drink and you're going to go in and have a Coke or a water, a gluten-free or alcohol-free beer, great, I can have a couple of those and not have to worry about it. So that's $20 or $25 right there, and another option versus water or Coke that might be $5. So there's a lot of money. And there's research that says they spend 15% more money, and it's probably because they're buying other options. So I think it's economically an option for restaurants and bars to look into.
Yeah, no, I think it is, and you have it already with mocktails. That wasn't anything 10 years ago, and it's now on every cocktail list. So, and I think it tells you a little bit how our mind works, because most of it, still feel that they have a buzz even though there's no alcohol. But the association of having a beer makes you feel like you're drinking alcohol. So I think it's or a cocktail will give you the same perceived value. Oh, I feel, a little looser, or I feel in a good mood, but without the alcohol. Yeah, so I think it'll come. It'll come to France as well. I don't think there will be an issue with, it'll come everywhere.
Yeah, I do too. So, so where did you go next after William Grant?
After William Grant, I went to Marie Bézard, which was at the time which is a French publicly listed company. It was bankrupt. I was brought as part of the new senior management team to turn that business around, and I took over the Americas. So we had a big importer in the U.S. and we had a production and distribution company in Brazil at the time. So did that for 7 years, tried to turn around the business. Very interesting because throughout my career, I've worked for publicly listed company and family businesses. And my Bizarre was very interesting because it was when we were working at turning that business around, it was, I think one of the worst rotten apples in the business that were. Every time we were talking to analysts, to PE firms, private equity, and so on, they say, we get involved when there's maybe 1, 2, 3 problems to fix. You have 8 or 9. It's too much. But it was super interesting. Very interesting also.
A big challenge.
Very big challenge, very, very exciting. Very interesting also because it was at the time where in the US we were dependent on vodka, right at the time when Absolut started taking price down and you had a price pressure on vodka. So it was a very interesting time as an importer. And it also got me to really learn the Brazilian market. So I used to be down there, a week every 6 weeks to run the business down there. So it was very, very interesting, very, very interesting market to be active in. So fantastic element. Fantastic 7 years, got involved into more board matters, M&A and all this, but it was very interesting 7 years there, trying to understand how to try and salvage a business.
Is there any interesting cultural differences in the Brazilian market that you want to share? Anything stand out as?
I think like everything, if you look at it, Brazilian as a market, go-to-market is very similar to, is a mix between the US and Europe. It is a very large market. Culturally, I think what's interesting is like a lot of Latin culture, they don't say no. And they don't like conflict too much. So it's very difficult because they're just always very nice, but it doesn't mean that you have a business to be done. And there is always a sense of, there's a trust. Mexico is even worse than that, but there's a trust. They need to know you. They need to feel that you're part of the culture. You understand it. They remain very proud, which they should be, of who they are. So they don't like too much when people come and try to tell them we know better.
Yeah, fair.
But it's a very dynamic market, very, very evolved market, complex one. But no, it's super interesting.
Yeah, that's really cool. So you got exposure to a lot of different cultures and ways of doing business.
Very different, but they're very dynamic. Usually, very driven, different way than American teams. They're a lot more social, a lot more about the EQ than would potentially be American company, where performance and bonuses are a very important matter when you talk to American teams. They wanna see the value of the hard work they're doing.
Right. That makes sense. So what happened? Did they sell? Did they get
So
picked up?
at the end, the company went public. It was purchased over time by another player in France, a family business called La Martiniquaise, who throughout the years increased their presence in the capital of the company. I think now they are at about 90% of that company. And in the US, what we did is we actually folded the distribution company and gave the right of distribution to Ceasars. So, we looked at different options from JV to, everything was on the table, and we selected at the end to get away. And that was like as a very interesting character in the industry. Mr. Guillant, the owner of La Martiniquaise, is one of the most interesting character I've seen. Very much like the Gordon family, the father. They're the difference I've seen with Mr. Guillant is an industry person. He likes to own assets. He likes to run plants, but he's one of the very rare people who doesn't have a strong ego. So, what I've noticed in the US, everybody wants to be big in the US. Everybody has an ego. It's the US. Mr. Guillant doesn't care. He knows he can't win, so he'll just pull away and do the right thing. And there are very few owners in the business that are capable of taking their emotion out of the table or their ego and look at the business saying, you know what, this is what I can do. This is what it would take me to be successful. This is not something that makes sense. I'm walking away. And what I've seen is very few players have the ability to do that.
Yeah, that is really interesting. So is Sazerac just the importer or supplier?
It's Sazerac is the importer.
Okay.
So one of their many divisions is the importer of now the portfolio of Marisa / La Martiniquaise for a lot of their brands.
I think that's smart.
It was the right move to make for that company at the time, and it's been a very good move for them. Again, what I think he has been very good. He was very clear on what matters to him and what were the criteria to have to make a decision, and he stuck to it. And I think that's, having worked a lot, that's sometimes what, founders lack, the ability to stick to a clear set of priorities, clear set of decision tools to drive their business.
Yeah.
And that's that. So Mr. Guillant is one of the best actors I've seen in the market. Gordon, late Mr. Gordon, was incredible as well in his knowledge of the business, knowledge of the distributor. I think those people are far and few these days in the industry. They really understood it, and they have an ethic and a way to do business that is quite unique.
And who is Mr. Gordon?
Mr. Gordon was it's the father of Glenn Gordon, Charles Gordon, who used to be the one who really brought Glenfiddich and single malt to the US. He was the chairman of William Grant, and he's the one who really built William Grant. But he was a character. He was 80 years old, and I remember being in marketing. He knew better the business than I did and my brands, and would come up every Monday with the results of the depletion to say, what's happening? Why did that distributor only order this? They usually do 3 times more. What's that? I mean, the knowledge that gentleman had was incredible. So you have those people who've been in the business forever, understand it. But what I've noticed is they have a very clear set of they have a toolkit that they use to assess everything, and they stick to it. And I think that's the most important in that business is, you gotta have consistency in whatever you do.
Yeah. Focus, right?
Exactly. Which we all seen can disappear and change.
Yes.
A lot.
Yeah, it's my wife's favorite word for me, focus.
Yeah.
I like to be involved in a lot of things, and my brain just keeps going, and it's really hard.
Yeah, I mean, some people have that ability. You never know.
So then what was next?
After Mary Brizard, I went into the wine business and worked for Harrah, which is one of the largest French wine producer outside of Monaco, to run their business in the U.S. Very, very charismatic gentleman, one of the big visionary of the wine. Really started the whole organic, biodynamic trend 23, 24 years ago. Very, very successful in the U.S. With a very strong relationship with at every level, especially with the customers. So it was very interesting. Stayed there for 2 years and then joined for a couple of months a Romanian entity to help them shape up their business worldwide. So totally different. I've moved a lot. Well, I've done long stint with some companies, but I've also been involved in a lot of different businesses. So wine was different, but very interesting in terms of the way he had built his presence in the US. And then Romania was a lot about structuring businesses with a very large business in Romania market I didn't know, so I spent a lot of time managing it. That company is market leader in Romania with 17% share of the market, so much bigger than Diageo and everything. So it was super interesting to manage a very large business and a very big player in that market.
Interesting. So how did that come into play from being in the U.S.?
I think I'm one of those very, there's quite a few, but I've always been in between two worlds. I've been in the U.S. and I'm European, I'm American and I'm French. And so on a lot of the time, also because I've been in the industry for 25 years now, it's a small industry. We all know each other.
Yeah.
So skill set is what people are looking for. And any large company at some point needs a presence in the US. So having someone based in the US, I spend a lot of time in planes, but it doesn't really matter these days where you're based.
Yeah.
And the structure and the go-to-market and the principle are the same everywhere. So that's why I went from US to most of our business unit were Southern Europe, and we also had Brazil. So, but they have plans to develop themselves in the US. So it made sense for them to have a local person.
Gotcha. Okay. And so, and after that?
After that, so now I just finished with them, and I'm looking at to your point about lip dip and everything. I'm looking at starting my own business around distribution in the US, because I believe there are, as you were saying, room to offer some solution.
Yeah, especially with playing around with low and no. I mean, I know every state's different, but there may be easier rules on the mocktail side of things, and I think right now they're all going through the traditional channels, but who's to say that couldn't have a separate one?
I mean, if you're low alcohol, I don't think you need to. I'm not too sure if I was an owner of a low alcohol, I wouldn't use distributor. Why go through a model you don't need to? I wouldn't. I would actually. Low alcohol is different because depending on the state, you're still stuck with a distributor. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that you have to. A lot of them do go because they see themselves as spirit brand or alcoholic brand with a twist that's no alcohol. I'm not too sure you need to do that. I think you can totally change your route to market and save a lot of money in the value chain by doing that, because your distributor doesn't work for nothing, and they used to very large margin. And whether you're non-alcohol, low alcohol, or with alcohol, they're not going to drive their number down just for you.
That's right. So do you have you mentioned a few people along your journey. Are there any mentors that, were strategic in maybe getting started, or any of the moves that you made? You said it's a small industry and people know each other. Are there people that have kind of helped you or guided
I
you
think I
through
was
any of these?
I was very fortunate to have a lot of good people I've worked with. So I think in every company I've worked with, I've had always people who I could go to and were straightforward, and help you. So I think whether it's William Ground, you know, where you had Jonathan Newson used to be my boss, you had Simon Learn. So I had a lot of people sort of giving me a chance, trusting me. And I think, had the same at Remy. Mick McDonough at the beginning of when I joined was instrumental. So I think you can always find, and I think what makes a good mentor, I never had someone who sort of followed me throughout my career. I always had more people who serve as anchored when I was in roles. And I think what I've noticed is most of them just were straight with you, very honest. I think figures, as I mentioned, that people really were inspiring. I would say that people like, Mr. Kaya, Charles Gordon, even, Jean Bertrand are people who are so visionary, so interesting in this, that it's sort of very, very, very good role models. But I think on mentor, I don't know if you remember Hélène Artsfeld at Remy was really good as well. She was a great marketer, good people skills. So I think it's really having the chance to have people who care. I think as long as you find someone who care and are looking and are able to guide you and have a tough chat when they need to. Because we all tend to stray, and I was really good at that. But, I got lucky to get people who would just tell me you're, calm down, you're out of your mind, this is not working, or what you're doing is getting the absolute opposite of what you want to do. So I could name so many people in a way that really have served me, helped me. But I think it came to their true desire to help and care for their people. And their ability to be honest with the people in their team.
Yeah, that's great. Is there any resources or books, podcasts, websites, anything that kind of helped with you and your transition to these different roles?
No, because I wish I could be a lot more like that. I'm more of I learn by doing.
Yeah, me too.
So I have a hard time, or there's none. I think for me, it's been always being exposed to different things. So a lot that has helped me is curiosity. And I've been able to be in a lot of different markets, being involved with a lot of different projects, brands at different stage of their life cycle. So I think it's the exposure and the curiosity that you have, because what I've noticed is you can always, and we've all been there, if you show interest and passion, people will give you more. They will want you to learn. They will look at your best. So it's just having the right attitude and not being able to try different things or things different.
Yep. I think podcasts for me, just listening to various ones in the last 12 to 14 months have been transformative for me. Just because
so
it's
you
easy.
have to send me the list so I can listen to them as well.
Okay, I will. When you make a big transition in your life, it's good to have some positive stories and some brain tricks on how to make those transitions. And I was just talking to my wife Loanna yesterday. I'm like, I think I know why I'm grumpy. I haven't been listening to my podcast lately. I need to get back on track, because they really have made it. Yes, they've made a substantial impact on me, and when I obviously am missing it. So I'll for sure I'll send you my list that I've really enjoyed.
No, pleasure. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, I mean, as you're getting started to do your own thing, I wouldn't have been able to do all the things I've done the last year without it. So for sure I'll send them over. we've talked a lot about some of the pain points and issues that we've had throughout our industry. Is there anything we left out that you want to talk about or comment on?
I think that to me, the most important for a lot of people is going back to your priorities is not that a lot of time it's understanding what matters. A lot between what people say and what truly matters. If you look at what I've seen often, and spirit is a perfect thing, there is a difference between the declared time you have to do something and the reality. So the pain point has always been that they tell you, take the time, let's build the brand, let's do the right thing. And 6 months after, they say, sorry, we need volume, we need this, we need that. So I think as a business, it's always your ability to balance what's right, what you were saying to the brand, with the immediate need that the business may have. You mentioned earlier, some people go and want to move some stock and drop it, and then it affect their price, consistency. It's all of those. And I think you have to learn how to not lose your head, because you know that a move may be wrong. But if the business needs it, then it's how do you navigate those waters? And as a business owner, I would say always, there's the fallacy that you can make a lot of money on our business quickly. And what I always say, they're very rare and few. That's the only one you hear about. But if you take, one of the biggest successes in the last 20 years, which is Tito, the guy was bankrupt twice. It took him 18 years to be the brand that no one can now purchase. And he's a mammoth. But, people forget that for 18 years, the poor guy has been struggling, suffering, living every pain possible. But he stuck to what he thought was right. And I think that's the most important in our industry, that, it takes time to build brands.
It does take time to build. And people just want to hear the story now. They don't want to know what it took to get there. And there's a lot of story behind that.
They want to know in the podcast because it's fun. They just don't want to go through it. They just want to hear about it. But I think that to me is one of the major pain points we have, is that dichotomy of immediacy in return with the reality that, as you were saying, especially in the US, as you don't control the entire flow, you may have the best desire, the best tool, but it needs to get through. And there's multiple layers, not everyone has the same objective. So you have to take that into consideration and never forget that point.
Yeah. Yeah. Well put. So any outlook, any changes, anything? We've kind of mentioned low and no, and that's going to happen. Is there anything else you're seeing out there that you've seen in other countries that, maybe we're missing here in the US?
There's so many things. I think it's ever evolving. I think, everybody talks about it, but AI is going to be, a game changer, because at the end, it's just going to change everything we do and force us to be different. I think ability to gather and utilize data will also change a lot. We are an industry where there was very little data available. The more data becomes available, the more the way we go to market will evolve. I think you're going to lose a little bit of the mystique that we had in the business, but you're also going to get a lot more efficiency in terms of how you manage it. And I think that's going to be the trick, is, you've seen a lot of the players hire P&G and very hardcore consumer goods used to really analyze data. I think, we are evolving. I don't think we'll go all that way, but we can't just stay the old tricks of relationship only based business.
Yeah, 100%. So what does Nicolas like to do in his free time? Are you an outdoors guy or
no? Well,
movie guy?
We talked about it. I play soccer, so I'm a big soccer person. I like to travel, so if I can, I go just travel and discover new things, new culture. or otherwise I'll, watch a series, read a book. But, and I have a very active artist wife, so she's the one who keeps it open up a lot, as you were saying. She's the one who listens to podcasts, reads, and so I'm just a sponge, just trying to parasite and learn from what she does, because she's a totally different world, which I love. I think when I get out and I'm not working, I try not to. I want to totally think and learn about something totally different.
Yeah. So you're a learner.
Yeah. Well, I learn. Well, I don't know. My wife would tell you that I don't learn, and that I'm too stuck in my ways. But I think I like to look. I like to observe, try to understand how other people do. I find it super interesting to learn about other businesses, because, it's a different, you were saying, how do you learn? I think sometimes we're just looking at different industry, totally different problem that makes you either reconsider what you do or give you ideas that you would never have had if you're always in the same bubble.
Yep. No, absolutely. Well, this has been so fun. So, Nicolas, as we mentioned very briefly, we met working at Remy together. You were in marketing, and I was on the national accounts team, and then field marketing team, where I was in the Fort Lauderdale, Miami market, right? And so we've kind of kept in touch, not a ton or whatever, but we reconnected recently in the last couple of years when you you moved to Dallas, right? And so we'll be back in the next week, so we'll definitely have to connect up.
Definitely. Let's have a alcohol or drinks together.
Yeah, every other one maybe.
Exactly.
We can stay out twice as long.
Exactly.
See, we're already spending more money.
Here we go.
There we go. Well, thank you so much for your time, and I really admire your journey in the industry. It's really incredible, the opportunities that you've been able to experience from the get-go, kind of help propel you, I think, along that path, and getting experience on that M&A at the beginning when digging your heels into, a big champagne house is really, really, really interesting. And I didn't know that about you, or I don't remember that. So if I don't remember that, I apologize.
No, don't worry. And thank you for the kind word.
Yeah, no, I'm super, I hate to say I'm proud of you, like you're my son or something, but I'm super proud because, like, that's so cool. All the things you've been able to do in the countries you've lived in and the markets you've been able to serve, and good brands you've worked with, all really good brands. So, congratulations, really. And I can't wait to hear the next phase of Nicolas Guillant.
Hopefully in a few months we can get back and I can tell you all the stories of those sounders and all the hopefully not too bad stories.
Yes, I'm in. I'm in. That's what makes this industry great, right? It's the people. Yeah. It's something that I hear a lot, especially when you start talking about mentors and people. When you're starting a new company, people reach out to other companies that have done it, and they're very resourceful and very generous, and people are generous with their time. So certainly nice to be a part of an industry that knows we can all work together, and there's plenty of room for everybody.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Couldn't agree more. Well, thank you, Jesse.
Yes, thank you. Well, we'll see you soon. Alrighty.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
This week's episode was produced by Fedora J Productions.